all of this madness, the same coroner, this Jay Radtke, he's the same coroner that cleared this one. So Mr. Radtke is apparently seeing these dead bodies and dead bodies and dead bodies and dead bodies and just ain't doing nothing about it. He's just exceptionally clearing things. And he's putting out these reports with all of this hidden information in it. So we gonna do some digging into Jay Radtke and find out just who he is and why so many mysterious deaths have no answers. Mr. Radtke, Mr. Jay Radtke, you got some explaining to do.
Yeah. Stop playing with me. Yeah. Stop playing with me. Yeah. Y'all niggas know it with me. Yeah. You heard what I said? Stop playing with me. Y'all better. Acting like they open when young, whatever. You know that they open when young, you know better. And you know the real is back. Who better? Get them young. Thank the Lord, man, they find a free mother get slick.
Welcome to the Criminal Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Moliere Dimanche, and Class A as always. Y'all know how that go. Today, we're gonna talk about another one of these that broke my heart. We lost a good one, folks. We lost a good, real man at the hands of these folks at the Department of Corrections. He's a dear friend of mine by the name of Richard Harper. All right, so Harper, I met Richard Harper in 2014 when I was released from CM. They sent me to Taylor Correctional Institution. This was the first camp I had ever been to that had a Black History program, right? And I didn't know anything about it. So, I used to do tattoos in there, and I used to draw portraits for, the families of the inmates and send them to their family. That was my hustle. That's how, I maintained myself in there. And Harper saw that, I could draw. And he was like, man, you'd be a good addition to the Black History program here at Taylor. So I'm like, oh man, they have a Black History program? He's like, yeah, it's a talent show. We're gonna have poetry. We're gonna have people singing. We're gonna have, we need an artist. So I'm like, all right, cool, no doubt. So he was one of the school teachers. He was one of the orderlies that worked up top and helped out with the educational program, and he got me in there. Now, keep in mind, I was a notorious writ writer. I was the one exposing all of the inmate abuse, filing the grievances every time they beat an inmate, gassed the inmate. So the administration didn't want me coming past center gate, period, at all, for nothing, because, I was, the enemy of the state. And Harper pulled some strings to get me allowed to go up top. So, and this was unknown to the administration, but once they found out I was working up top, and they saw that I was occupied and I was doing something that I like doing. I didn't have to go to work and cut grass. I can go up top and draw. They was like, oh wow, this is something that keeps him out of our hair, so let's let him stay. So me and Harper became the people who put the Black History program together at Taylor, and it was phenomenal to see inmates get up there and all of those years of anguish and pain come out in their songs and come out in their dances and come out in their poetry. It was awesome. It was something like, I had never experienced anything like that in prison, to where we had the freedom to really express ourselves. And it was just joy. And speaking of joy, the woman who was responsible for it, her first name was Joy. I can't remember her last name, but she was running the modality program that helped inmates who had drug addiction problems recover and reintegrate into society. She was a former crack addict, recovered, and started reaching out to the prisons to help people who were drug addicted. I can't remember her name, but so Harper, he convinced me to do a portrait, right? And he got me a image of Dr. Martin Luther King, Barack Obama, and Malcolm X. They were all in the thinking pose like this. And I drew all of them sitting beside each other thinking. And the woman who ran the modality program, she took that home. And she's got it to this day. And the picture was in black and white, but Obama in the middle was in color, and his color was shining out, you know, bringing color to the rest of the drawing. It was awesome. And when I was at Taylor, a sergeant named Sergeant Tadlock and this captain named Captain Lau, I actually, there's a chapter in the book called Heart Failure and Hereditary Diseases. And in that chapter, I actually talk about what happened to Harper at Taylor. They harassed him because he had some stubble on his face. They told him to shave, and he told them no. And they beat him up and put him on CM and all of that. That was the last time I seen Harper, but he was alive. And I knew Harper. He was just like me. He was somebody who he had the heart to file a grievance, and he didn't take no unnecessary disrespect. If he was in the wrong for something, you know, he was the type of person who could wear it. But if an officer disrespected him or talked to him like a boy, he would let them know, look, I'm a man. You know, I'm not your boy. I'm a man. I didn't, you know, I'm not no sex offender. I'm not no snitch. You're gonna treat me like a man while I'm here. He always stood his ground, and he always paid the price for that too. So in this file, he ended up at Jackson Correctional Institution, man. And I got a chapter in there about Jackson too, aspirin. And it was crazy because when I got to Jackson, this was years after I had been tear gassed, and I filed my lawsuit and I started the litigation process. And this was around the time that my case law came out in 2015 when I was at Jackson. And it was crazy because when I got to Jackson, all of the people who I mentioned in that lawsuit who were captains and sergeants and officers had all upgraded. Now they were sergeants and lieutenants and wardens, and everybody had moved on up. And it was like, dang, like all of this happened at Liberty. I get transferred to Jackson, and all of y'all done came to Jackson too, and we all here at the same time. Ain't that something? And then right when I got there, they published the case law. They was like, no, get him out of here now. So they transferred me, and those were the same people I prosecuted in that 3-day trial at in Tallahassee. But Harper ended up at this camp, man, and this institution was it's up there in that Panhandle, and the Panhandle, you know, those are the worst prisons in the state. That's where you up there with those Klansmen and all of that. So according to the Inspector General report, a captain was passing by a confinement cell. Now, somehow he was in administrative confinement waiting to be served a DR or something. And Captain Abner Bowen walks past the cell, and he sees an inmate named Manuel Herbert restraining Harper, right? So he tells, according to the report, he tells Herbert to let Harper go. And Herbert tells Captain Bowen, no, if I let him go, he's gonna hit me. So this is strange because there's a lot of redactions in this report. And it says, inmate Herbert, he let Harper go. And inmate Herbert was advised to step to the side. And then there's a redaction, right? And it says that Harper fell to the floor. So it's like, hold on. If he was restraining a man to keep him from hurting him, how did he let him go and he fell to the floor? And then the report goes on to say that Herbert helped him get up off the ground. So that's confusing. So that's like you restraining me. This wild man, you gotta restrain me to keep me from hurting you, right? You let me go and I fall to the ground? If I was a threat to your safety to where I had to be restrained to keep from hurting you. Why would I fall to the ground when you let me go? And why would I need your help picking me up off the ground if I was a threat to you? This is crazy. So I'm assuming that all of these redactions were somewhere inside these redactions, chemical agents were used, because they allege that after he got up off the ground, they went and got the handheld recorder. Now, they only pull the recorder out for uses of force. They're not gonna go get this camera to say, oh, we're gonna record you being helped off of the ground and being provided. They don't do that. That's not even in the use of force law. They're not even required to do it. They're not gonna ever pull out a camera unless it's a requirement, unless it's something that they have to do. So they pull out the camera according to this Inspector General report, and then there's subsequently redaction. Such and such was called redaction. And then he's pronounced deceased. So the way that I interpret this whole thing is this. Harper was one of those inmates that they wanted to get hurt. Now, when correctional officers, say you're a writ writer and things are on paper that you have problems with correctional officers, right? And they want you dead, this is what they do. They're gonna have an inmate on their payroll, and this other inmate, Manuel Herbert, who was apparently in prison for sexual battery, and I guarantee you, Harper, probably had a bone to pick with him about that. You a sex offender. We don't have no conversation. We're not gonna be friends. And the officers will put you in a cell with an inmate that's gonna mess you up. They're either gonna put you in handcuffs, throw you in the cell and let him mess you up, or they're gonna find the biggest imposing inmate they can find, put him in the cell with you, and make him do something to you. And I'm assuming that was the case here. And the reason that I say that is because they went to some extreme measures to make sure that after Harper died, all of the finger pointing was at inmate Herbert, but then they cleared him. They exceptionally cleared him. So you have an altercation where, okay, first the inmate puts his hands on Harper, and then Harper falls to the ground. And now at the gate, you're automatically putting it out in this report like inmate Herbert was the one who needed protection, right? But this man falls to the floor after inmate Herbert lets him go. That doesn't tell you that Herbert was doing something to Harper. You see what I'm saying? So this is an obvious hookup, and I know how this goes. So inmate Harper is taken out of the cell. They pull out the camera. That means force was used. That doesn't mean anything else. Force was used. So I'm assuming in some of these blacked out parts, there was application of chemical agents, and that's what killed him. This was their way to finally get some revenge against this man that they hated so much because he was just so rebellious. And they managed to get away with this one. Now, ironically, the same coroner who's been popping up in all of these panhandle mysterious deaths where everyone's exceptionally clear, they blasting people in the mouth with tear gas and all of this madness, the same coroner, this Jay Radtke, he's the same coroner that cleared this one. So Mr. Radtke is apparently seeing these dead bodies and dead bodies and dead bodies and dead bodies and just ain't doing nothing about it. He's just exceptionally clearing things, and he's putting out these reports with all of this hidden information in it. So we gonna do some digging into Jay Radtke and find out just who he is and why so many mysterious deaths have no answers. Mr. Radtke, Mr. Jay Radtke, you got some explaining to do. So, just by me knowing the type of animosity staff had towards Harper makes me feel like this was a hit job. There's no other way around it. Just because he was a rebellious inmate. He was an inmate who had zero respect for authority, and he wasn't like the belligerent type. I saw that on his record. He was charged with battery on the Leo a few times, and my guess is that it was just cases that he caught behind bars. You know, he probably was in handcuffs and was restraining, and you know, these officers, they'll allege that you hit them. We see it all the time in the news. They always charge people with assaulting them when they get caught on camera. They were the one beating up that person, and then charge them vice versa to cover the trail. So my friend Richard Harper, a good one, we lost him to this madness. Eventually, I'm gonna have to get enough money together to start sending private investigators into all of this stuff, because I'm not gonna let them get away with this one. I'm not gonna let them get away with none of it, because you know, all of the stuff that I see, that and me knowing what's what, we got to get some answers, and it hurts me to my heart because Harper didn't have nobody, and when you die in prison and you ain't got nobody, they used to bury you at this place called Boot Hill, you know, and when you don't have nobody and you have to be buried on prison grounds, please believe they stealing all your organs. You know, they did away with Boot Hill, but what they do now is they just cremate the inmates. Who's overseeing that? They probably, you know, with the Klan being so heavily involved in the Department of Corrections, they probably cutting off toes and slicing off skin and keeping souvenirs. Remember back in the day, they used to make belts out of the skin of dead black people. And with these inmates who ain't got nobody coming to claim their bodies, please believe it's the same thing is happening to them. So this is real life, folks. I'm the only one that's gonna give it to you like this. So we don't let this happen to nobody in your family. You know, there's nothing you can do when somebody's in prison, but keep the connection strong. Keep the connection strong, and make sure you talk to them as often as possible, because this can happen to your loved one, and it doesn't matter rich or poor, you know, known or not known. This has happened to inmates who had families. This has happened to inmates who had money, you know, whose families had money. It's just the know-how of how to appropriately deal with the situation was just not there. So with that, my friend Richard Harper is the mysterious case of the day, folks. Don't forget, get your copies of It Takes a Criminal to Know One. You can listen to the audiobook and listen to me reenact all of these characters, these correctional officers, and I nailed them to the teeth. Sometimes I listen to my audiobook and I feel like I'm talking to these sergeants and these officers, because, you know, I know them. I nailed it on the head, from the accent to the attitude, man. It was a fun performance that I put on with that, but it was almost scary the way that I nailed them down to the teeth. So if you want to hear those folks and how, you know, they so casually embrace this evil culture of theirs, check out that book. Check out the audiobook. There's 2 free chapters on the website, MolaireExpressions.com. Get the whole thing, because it's something. So with that, folks, I'm signing off. The next one that we cover, most likely going to be another one in the Panhandle. I haven't decided yet, because I know I keep telling y'all we're going to cover Randall Aparo, and you know, I feel the urgency to put the spotlight on people who are not talked about. You know, I'm gonna get to some specifics of his, but the only point in covering his murder is to really just demonstrate how evil the correctional officers are. But it's all public record. So many publications have put the spotlight on Randall Laparo. It was a big one. So and the officers were arrested. You know, the stuff that I'm talking about is officers getting away with it. But one of these days we're gonna touch on his, so I can show you the specifics and the media did a great job pointing out the evilness and the corruption in that case, because he got killed because he pissed off a nurse that was passing by his cell because he was sick and she wouldn't give him no attention. She went and told the captain and they came and killed him, sprayed him until the chemical agents left the outline of his body and his Bible on the floor. So with that, signing off. Get ready for the next one. All right, so as y'all can see, it's the wee hours of the morning, and I figure I'd just do a little MTV Cribs throwback type of deal to show y'all the behind the scenes things of how I get down here at the studio. So I'm gonna take y'all to the studio. Check it out. Oh, and as you can see, I'm Class A, uniform and all, but I got the red bottoms. I got to be the first person in world history to be rocking red bottoms with Class A blues. All right, so take y'all back here to the studio. So this is where all of the magic happens, folks. Right here in Dimanche Studios. And that's the green screen. My friends always ask me, man, how do you get the infinite prison background? I'm a VFX artist. I went to school. When I got out of prison, some friends of mine made it to where I had a scholarship to an art college because I do art. And at that school, I learned the most advanced tricks in graphic design while I was studying studio art at the same time. So I do this all myself, no help. I'll get some more behind the scenes footage for y'all, but this is my back house. I done turned it into a studio temporarily. Once I start filming the film adaptation of It Takes a Criminal to Know One, this place is gonna be like a Hollywood studio in here, and y'all gonna get all the behind the scenes footage.